And good morning, everyone, and welcome to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. My name is Alexi Boyd. We are here with two very special guests today, talking all things community services, a very long and proud tradition with Rotary, of course. It's been a part of Hornsby community and the Waitara and the Ku-ring-gai community for many, many years. And I'm very pleased to have two guests on the show today, which is Ian Cameron and, of course, Peter from PCYC. And I suppose you guys both represent Rotary, though, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Awesome. And we're here to talk today about the different... What are we going to talk about? We're talking about the different projects that Rotary does when we interlink with small biz, of course, and small business. It's a very important connection that you have with small business, not only for the sponsorship opportunities, but I guess things like gifts in kind, opportunities where people can donate their services and their time, and that connection that you have with the community. And of course, because we're in a very old community in Hornsby, relative to the rest of Sydney, there's a long tradition there as well with Rotary's involvement. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And of course, there's some exciting projects that are happening. If you live in the Waitara area, you would no doubt know about what's going on at the moment in Waitara, as with other parts of Hornsby, with the explosion of construction. But I think it would be easy to look at that construction site and say to yourself, oh, it's just another block of flats going up. But it's not. It's not. It's actually a really important community, well, not a community event, but a community construction site. Yay, something they're giving back to the community. So let's talk a little bit about that first of all. Peter, tell me, first of all, what's your background and how did you become involved with Rotary and PCYC?
Great question. My involvement with Rotary was I got caught in a crossfire. So I had Rotarian up one end of the corridor and another one at the other end of the corridor when I was in Hornsby here. So I got invited along to a meeting, and it's a long story, but I joined Waitara Rotary as it was back then. We've now just combined Hornsby and Waitara to form the Rotary Club of Hornsby District, a brand new club. So, and then I've been involved with Neighbourhood Watch prior to that, and I've been involved with the PCYC back from my probably misspent youth and other karate and basketball and so on. So I joined the PCYC committee through my Rotary connections after realising that the PCYC actually came out of Rotary as a Rotary project back in 1937.
Wow. That was something you mentioned before we came on the air. That's really interesting that it's almost an evolution of community reason, and the fact that you yourself have come out of Neighbourhood Watch as well. Yep,
and it's quite interesting because what we're trying to do now is to connect Rotary back into PCYC because a lot of that history is gone, but reconnect. And a classic example is the Ian's Club here, the Rotary Club of Wahroonga, have been a phenomenal supporter of small business, the PCYC, which is actually it's a not-for-profit, but it's a small business. You run on a business basis, and so some funding there has been funding our police programs on some of the youth programs with their police. And it's been absolutely brilliant, the funding and the programs that the police are running out of there, which is a small part, but a very significant part of what the PCYC stands for.
That's what I find quite interesting, actually, is the involvement and the crossover between all these organisations. And what I think a lot of businesses and people who live in Hornsby don't realise is the crossover. I think when I came into the area maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I realised pretty quickly that there's a lot of community involvement, a lot of people who do a lot of volunteer work, and it's fabulous. What I didn't realise is that the groups work together for... want of a better word, the common good. And that's what you're describing now, and that's really exciting.
Then another classic there is Wahroonga Rotary, Hornsby, Waitara, Barara, all these other clubs around, Taramara, support for Studio Arts.
Yes.
Studio Arts was a fledgling group when we got involved there back in year 2000. We were able to encourage them to move into their new building and get some funding for that. Chamber of Commerce were a great support then. All the PC, all the plumbing, all that went in there. The electrical works, all organised through Rotary and the PC and the Chamber of Commerce. So there's been a tremendous community involvement by Rotary and other organisations for many, as you say, for many, many years. But a lot of it goes unnoticed. And I think it's in our interest to promote what we're doing in the community.
Absolutely.
Because it's for the benefit of the community and for our respective organisations.
That's exactly right, and I think what's interesting is that what you were mentioning there about the Chamber of Commerce, and just touching on the fact that it's not necessarily sponsorship or dollars, which as the economy peaks and troughs is not always easy for businesses to do, but in fact gifts in kind. So the plumbing and the electricity, you're saying that actually came through connections with the Chamber of Commerce. That's awesome. I mean, that's real community effort working together as a team, and that's great to hear. So Ian, tell me about the Rotary Club of Wahroonga, because that's a very strong club, a well-known club in the area as well, and you're involved with lots of different things, and there's the women's shelter and events. Tell us a little about the club itself.
Certainly. Thanks, Alexi, for having us today. It is a 27-year-old club, and in this particular format that it has at the moment. And it's involved in a lot of projects. We find that sometimes the amount of work we have to undertake is beyond perhaps some of the numbers of members we all have. Now, while we have 60 members in our club, we do take on a lot. And we're always looking for volunteers, and in fact, one doesn't have to be a member of the Rotary Club. They can sign up on our website to be a volunteer. And we have developed over the last 12 months or so quite a significant database of volunteers. So when we have a particular initiative, then we'll draw people in, or we'll send them out an invitation to come and join us.
So we talk a lot about processes and procedures here on Small Biz. That's my favourite topic. So if I was a member of the community, and I'd obviously heard of Rotary, as we all have, and I was really keen to be involved, again, didn't want to get too involved, just want to sort of help out at a couple of events. How do I go about that process?
Well, there's a couple of avenues. Residents, volunteers, intended volunteers could go to www.rotary.org, which is and look for the Club Finder link. Type in the district that you happen to be in, and there'll be a list of clubs present themselves to you, and you could pick out a club and then make contact with them. In terms of Wahroonga Rotary Club, we have a link on our Facebook and on our website for people to click on and fill out a form and just become a volunteer, so to speak. Very valuable resource, indeed.
Manpower is the key with these things,
Manpower is the key.
It?
So the Rotary Club performs quite a management function in that sense, and does a lot of this linking up work that Peter was talking about. So through that we create the projects, and then we need the manpower to execute. But it might be, for instance, from today, I'm dressed for work because I'm heading off to a barbecue down at the Knox Grammar School, where we're providing support for an event called ABOX, which looks after, for a whole week, provides respite care for parents with children with disabilities. And so a lot of children from St Lucy's Special School in Wahroonga will be coming to spending the week at Knox.
In their border facilities,
yes,
of course.
That's right.
What a wonderful thing to do.
And it's a fantastic event.
Thanks, Knox.
Thanks, Knox.
I didn't even think of that. When you were saying respite, I was thinking, were they going to sleep in the hall?
Well, it gives them relief to the parents.
That's
and so
fantastic.
on. It's a really good idea. And our club has a special day today where we go and we cook a barbecue and feed them and so on and so forth. One of the lovely things about that event is that a lot of the boarders and older school children who have now left for the year, as at last Friday, I guess, they come and mentor these disabled children for the week. They stay with them as buddies. And that's a really worthwhile project.
I mean, that just sounds absolutely fantastic. But I'm just thinking, with my fundraising head on, that is a huge undertaking. I mean, the logistics and the organisation, not to mention the insurance documents and dealing with children and dealing with families. That requires indeed the manpower.
Yep.
And so tell me, if I was a business, how do businesses support you at the moment? We talked a little bit about gifts in kind previously.
Yep.
But if I was a business and I said, look, I'm a business, I don't have a huge amount of cash flow, or I may have cash flow this year and I'd like to make a donation, but other than that, what can businesses do to get involved?
Well, a lot of larger businesses certainly have community arrangements within their organisation to promote community activity amongst their staff and employees, and so they encourage them to be involved in projects outside their business life. Somewhat dependent on the geography of where they live, of course, but Rotary is very happy to work with organisations to have their folks come and work with us as volunteers. Apart from that, we have at Wahroonga, and I know other clubs in our particular zone also, have relationships with larger organisations such as, for instance, locally here, the McCarroll's Toyota Group. Down the road a little, we have a strong relationship with the SAN. Mm-hmm. And out of that, we once, twice a year, depending on the organisation, we'll go to that organisation and have a vocational awards day where we join in with the management of the organisation, and our senior people, our president perhaps, would go and present a Rotary award, vocational award. Recently we had a connection with all a lot of major schools in the area, both public and private schools, and we held an awards evening at the Pymble Golf Club where we awarded recognition to teachers from those schools. So we look to develop relationships with businesses very much, because apart from anything else, there might be professional people within those organisations who would like to join Rotary as an organisation, apart from being a volunteer.
That's right.
So we look to that to source new membership. We must have new members all the time, of course, to refresh our capabilities and take on board positions and things of that nature. So we do like to work a lot with businesses, and we find that a great source of energy for our organisation.
I know, for example, businesses with, say, 5 or 10 employees are looking for something to make the... I was just talking about this the other day with an HR presentation that I did, how important it is to hang on to staff and that you maintain their loyalty and you maintain their training in terms of professional development, but also personal development. And this is perhaps where businesses who are slightly smaller can tap into that. If they get involved with a group like Rotary, and then you say, look, I've got a bunch of 10 staff, I'd like to do something which is team building, which isn't just going off to a camp and building something with sticks and making an egg not fall down, but I'd actually like to get involved with the group. And it sounds to me like Rotary would be the perfect opportunity to team build, to really get the group together and give something back to their local community where they're based, so keeping it local again.
Certainly, Alexi. And I might add that Peter, next to me here, has been our vocational service director in our district, which houses 74 Rotary clubs, in fact, from the mountains to the beaches and up to Gosford Central Coast. So Peter might like to comment on some of the vocational training that goes on within Rotary with our young people.
What I will comment on is part of Rotary is youth avenue of service. And one of the things that Wahroonga Rotary and other clubs around here have been very supportive of over many years is RYLA, which is Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. So these are young kids from 18 to 24 years of age in that age bracket. So they can come out of the commercial or the PCYC or any organisation, and they go through this intense week of training, leadership training, in January, which is a hot time of year. But the rewards and the success out of that, and people just talk about that RYLA experience for decades to come. It's a great foundation for their personal development and their contribution back to their own organisation and back to the community at large. So that's one of the great things that Rotaries will do, and that's a crossover between vocation and youth. So you get these crossover between the avenues of service. So
if people are hiring people within that age bracket, that could be something that they could get involved in from a work perspective. But you're ticking that box as an employer, but also they're ticking that box in terms of being involved in the community. And it's about having flexible work arrangements. It's about understanding that that's going to, you're giving them the opportunity to give back, and that means that they're seeing work as something positive. And it actually was something I was talking to Amanda Choi with the other week about being a millennial magnet. I love that expression, millennial magnet. They're looking for people they're looking for businesses to work for that have a sustainability and a community ethos as part of their processes and procedures and their policy documents. And what better way to do that than to get involved with Rotary and say, look, this is who we partner with. And that means that we're not necessarily just choosing one charity to support. We don't just sort of throw money at a charity, but we actually get involved in terms of volunteers hours. Because, as a volunteer organiser myself, it's it's almost, you sometimes want to say to people, I don't want your money, I just want your time, because that is about building the community that we're in, not just...
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's almost more important. And what a great way for businesses to get involved. It's fantastic.
Now, Ian mentioned vocational service, and one of the things we've done at the district level with vocational service in our Rotary district is memorandums of understanding. So there's one with the PCYC, there's another one with World Skills Australia, and the idea is to encourage these young people to come into right on these programs, but also for Rotarians to get involved in those community-based organisations. So PCYC, I'm a Rotarian, so I'm on their committee. So most committees have been inward-looking for many years. So people coming out of the boxing, wrestling, martial arts are on the committee, trying to broaden that out, so bring people from outside. So Rotarians come on that, and because that connects back with the past. And leading into the future, there's new clubs being built around New South Wales. There's a great opportunity there for Rotarians to come, bring their expertise and their connections into that committee. Yep. Their connections back to Chamber of Commerce, back to Rotary, back to Member of Parliament, back to the Mayor. These sort of connections which Rotarian can do.
Leverage.
Yes,
that's a
exactly
good
right.
word, leverage.
Well, we're just going to take a quick break now and listen to some community service announcements, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about what's happening down at PCYC in Waitara. Very exciting, and what that's going to give back to the community. You are listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. Small Biz Matters. Anyway, welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. And we have Ian and Peter here representing from Rotary and PCYC. Now, just before the break, we were talking a little bit about the involvement, the crossover with Rotary and Chamber of Commerce and that sort of thing. But there is something very exciting in Waitara happening, and it's okay because it's not another development site. Tell us about it, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Alexi. It's actually quite surprising the amount of people have come up to me saying, is that another high-rise apartment building going at the back of the Oval? They're taking over the whole Oval? I said, no, it's not a high-rise apartment building. It's a PCYC. So no, this is fantastic. This has been a 15-year project for me, so and of course others. But I guess the message here is never lose sight of a goal,
yeah,
a vision. But it's become a reality. So what's happening here at the back of the Oval is a long, involved story that over those years and different sites and the bowling club site and taking over the bowling club and all the history behind that. I can go into a lot of detail, but I won't. But with the site at the back of the Oval on the southern side, the new PCYC there is a large complex, as you can appreciate. There's 90-car basement parking going to the building, so we won't be relying on street parking at all for our members and activities. So we're totally self-contained. This is a requirement by council, but it's a big cost factor to put that in, but as part of the design. The ground floor, the big slab's poured now. There'll be 2 multi-purpose sports courts, so be indoor soccer, futsal, table tennis, badminton, volleyball, a whole range of activities, basketball we can run on those sports courts. There's another area beside the sports court, the size of a sports court, dedicated for gymnastics and parkour and those activities. So you've got this massive big expanse there, basically 3 sports courts. At the back of that, on the northern face, looking up the Oval, is a full gym. So we're sort of focusing that more on sports fitness.
Yep.
So we're not competing with all the other gyms around the area. So I don't have too much point in that, but it was focused, and that's where that design's at. So that's a large area. A cafe is going into the building.
Oh, fab. Indoor,
outdoor seating. It's been a great partnership between Hornsby Council and the PCYC, this whole project. Indoor youth hub area, big drop-in area for the youth. Police officers have been there, of course, so our police officers are running their police programs. Very dedicated officers and very experienced working with youth and doing some great work there. Upstairs, a big 400 square metre room up there looking over the Oval, so it'll be there for table tennis during the day for the school kids and table tennis, but also cultural activities, dance, drama, all these cultural things that we're doing now, but there's a lot of opportunity there to grow, especially when you look around the demographics and different nationalities there. We've got to reach out to all these different community groups.
Absolutely.
So how do you make yourself relevant in today's environment? And that's our challenge now as we look forward, is how do you make yourself relevant? And that's you can look back at your history and all that's there, the boxing, wrestling, martial arts, all those activities, they're ongoing. But how do you move forward? And so table tennis has been a big one for us. Huge one with both as a weekend activity and with the school sports and badminton. And so there's a lot of other things. We've got bolly dance and all those activities happening now. But there's great opportunity to growth for all these different kind of activities that we haven't experienced before.
And how many stories is it going to be, the one at Otago?
There'll be 2 stories on the western side, but on the eastern side, it's just a huge area because of the basketball court.
Yeah.
You need the head height. So you're looking about almost 2.5 stories high to comply with your regulations for basketball height and badminton and table tennis. You've got these height conditions. So to be able to run state events, national events, which we're aiming towards. So you've got to comply. So you've got to have these heights in there for that. So that's all single story.
Yeah.
For a big part of the building, but the other side will be 2-story, and even the top story is going to be fairly high ceiling because of the height of the ceiling for the sports courts coming across there.
Yeah, of course, it's got to connect.
A great opportunity there for growth and new activities, new initiatives. But it's the scheduled opening date is July 2017, and they're on target. There's been concrete pour yesterday for the top floor on the 2-story section. So, and the structure's going up now for the supporting the sports court walls and the roofing beams. That's all in place now. So things are really moving forward at a pretty rapid rate.
That's fantastic. And it must be so good after all those years of negotiating and working with various government organisations and construction. It must be very nice to see it actually come to fruition. What's happening with the site at Hornsby on George Street?
That got sold to a property developer.
Awesome.
So that'll be sold. So the money basically coming out of that is funding the youth
centre.
So people say, you're a government organisation? No, we're self-funded.
Yes.
So the money for funding for the new developments coming out of the sale of the George Street property, there is some counter contribution through Section 94 to support that development, but most of the money is coming out of the sale of the George Street property, and that was zoned for high rise down there. So there's quite a nice.
Question on behalf of small business: is there going to be a meeting room in that facility that potentially small businesses could rent out?
The PCYC?
Yeah.
In fact, there's a really good room. It's called the President's Room.
The President's Room.
And right above the entry foyer, and it's quite a large area.
Uh-huh.
And that room's going to be available for these sort of activities. So we can run this for meetings and all these sort of things.
That's
there's 2 other big rooms in there. Of course, we run the traffic offender course and all these other courses in there. So there'll be rooms there for all those activities. Mm-hmm. But there's a nice little room there which would be ideal for some of these community type events.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's another good way to connect in with business and advertise the space to businesses and all the activities that are going on, because it sounds very busy. It's going to be fantastic.
A great opportunity
years.
for Triple H to come in there with the outdoor broadcast. For
we love those opportunities. They're great. Any sort of events, anybody's having an event, let us know. We can outside broadcast for you and come live from your organisation. So that sounds really exciting. It's wonderful to see. In amongst all this development that we're kind of drowning in Hornsby at the moment. Yes, it's necessary, but what I'm finding frustrating is that the policies that are being put in around it are very reactive, are very, wait until the residents have a whinge about the parking or the public transport or the issues there, and then we'll deal with it. Whereas I can see here that this is something that's forward planning. It's something that's been on the cards for 15 years and everything's been thought of, and who you're connecting with and the parking and everything. It's, wow, you're being really proactive instead of reactive.
Let me comment there because we were going to build on the Bowling Green site because we'd taken over, that's Crown land, so we'd taken over that whole lease down there. There's some complications there with stormwater drainage. So we had meetings with council, the council executive, and we actually asked council, what's your vision for this whole precinct, all the high-rise going on?
Did you pull out a dictionary and ask them to explain what a vision meant?
So, my vision's been a sporting, recreational, performing arts precinct for that whole area for many, many years. The council is sharing that vision. So, anyway, cut long story short again, council came up with this master plan, which involved the land swap and recreational space and parking is all part of that overall.
Necessary.
So, but they've come up with this fantastic master plan for that whole precinct, and it's just absolutely brilliant. So what's going to come out of that with the tennis courts relocated to the north face on Edgewood David, the 6 courts there, green space, community space, the connection between the PCYC inside to outside, PCYC space to council space through the cafe. The future is just absolutely brilliant for that whole precinct.
I'll pop on my bush care hat for a second. You've obviously got the retention of all the trees that are being removed. They're going to be replanted and they're going to be natives from the area, actual area natives, rather than wattles from Western Australia, which sometimes the council decides to put in. So there'll be native trees. You've got to use
Native
that
trees,
fantastic Hornsby nursery that
All
we've
the
got.
turpentines that were there before stayed. They're protected.
Yes, that's wonderful.
The camper laurels weren't.
Of course.
But then there was a heritage order on those anyway, but they weren't because of some cultural significance, but they've gone to free up space there. But the turpentines and there was a lot of native planting all through there, yes.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Oh, that's good news. So that's a wonderful new development that the PCYC and Rotary have obviously worked together. We were talking at the beginning of the program about working together and supporting different programs. Now, Ian, take us through some of the major events that are happening in 2017 that businesses or individuals could very easily get involved with, either through volunteer efforts or gifts in kind or sponsorship.
Mm-hmm. Well, the clubs are very much run their own events. So Rotary is represented in this particular area, by 7 clubs in this particular zone. We have, as I said, 74 clubs throughout our district. So there's just a myriad of events go on all the time. We have an event calendar in the Hornsby Advocate every month in the first week of the month, and also you've been very kind to add our event calendar to your website, and I hope your listeners will go to your website and have a look at what's on with Rotary. In the December-January period is very much predominantly selling Christmas trees, that wonderful period of time we have, and other sort of raffle ticket selling and so on and so forth. So once we're through that into February, the clubs will sort of refresh themselves and hop into some things. Particularly down towards the St Ives area, in March they have a very busy month. The St Ives Rotary Club, for instance, they have the Food and Wine Festival on the Village Green in the early part of
and that's
March.
getting bigger and bigger every year. That's fantastic, really coming up as and being well known as the Food and Wine Festival of the year, of that part of the year anyway.
Yeah, in that location for sure. The Wahroonga Food and Wine Festival was held in October, and that's a wonderful event as well. So they're becoming, as you say, very popular things to attend. St Ives Rotary run that. There's another event towards the end of March, 26th of March, I think it is, where a number of clubs, 4 clubs in that area, Turramurra, Ku-ring-gai, Wahroonga and St Ives, run what's called the Bobbin Head Classic. Now that's a bike event which is in its 5th year. It has something like 2,500 riders. It's about 60-40 male to female, when we're trying to build the female content. So all you girls and ladies out there who'd like to...
I don't get on a bike.
Jump on a bike.
No, I don't do biking. Sorry. I'll hold a flag. I'll come and volunteer and hold a flag.
I've written your name down on the volunteer list already.
Oh my goodness, I've broadcast that I'm going to be there on next
Motorbike's
March.
not allowed.
Not motorbike.
Peter can't help you with that.
So we, as an example of volunteering, for that event we need approximately 450 volunteers. Everything from road marshals to helping at the start and finish lines and so on and so forth. So it's quite a significant event.
And how much does it raise?
It raises something like $250,000.
That's massive.
Of which 50% goes to Lifeline, and the other 4 clubs participate in a quarter each, and those funds go direct to those charities which are nominated by the Rotary Club. Of significance in this particular area around Hornsby is the Hornsby Women's Shelter, and they are recipients of something like $15,000 to $20,000, depending on how much we
Just
raise.
from that one event. What a wonderful thing to be part of.
Yeah, it is.
And it's well known. I mean, I've spoken to people who live in Queensland who have heard about the Bobbin Head Classic. It's really getting up there with a cycling thing. I don't know if anybody's driven down that road leading down to Bobbin Head. I wouldn't want to be on a bike going up and down that hill, but people they do enjoy it.
Well, there are 4 rides, and the shorter ones for the Alexis of the world, and the longer professional ones go right out to West Head, and it's an amazing race, 106 kilometres, that particular leg. So it's a great day, and everyone has a heck of a good time. Our volunteers put their hand up to come back every year. They thoroughly enjoy it. Even the remote ones sitting out near Coal and Candle Creek somewhere, listening to the birds and watching the river.
Not a bad day. Not a bad way to spend your day.
That's right. So that's the sort of thing. I mean, Rotary gets involved in very, very large projects, $1 million type projects. For instance, just recently, Wahroonga Club was the host to Dick and Pip Smith, who came to announce their donation of $1 million to the Rotary Australia Benevolent Society. And we hosted the event at Wahroonga, but the money will go to the Benevolent Society. Now, that'll help all through New South Wales and Australia, the particular needy groups in the community. And a Rotary Club can apply to that society for funds, and it has to match the funds and then provide them to. And
that's where the individual fundraising of each of the groups come from. They have to, as you said, they have to match. So it's not just a matter of making an application and then asking for the funds to be redistributed. There has to be effort involved for each individual club. It's an interesting model, isn't it, for charity work?
It really is. I mean, Rotary becomes, as I think I referred to earlier, the manager of and integrator of a lot of these things. They have the tentacles all the way up to Rotary International. I mean, there's 1.2 million Rotarians around the world. So there's a lot of resource out there. But right down to the local event, selling the Christmas trees and so on. So they're all part of a chain of
and the other thing that I've been involved with, this is how I became involved with Rotary and understanding how they operate in the first place, was you partnered with Ku-ring-gai Council and you did a breakfast where you brought in a fantastic speaker who was all about improving sales and those sort of things. And he came in and spoke to the local business community, and that was something that you partnered with the council, with Ku-ring-gai, who have a fantastic economic development officer, and working together with businesses to actually give back to the business community and build your relationships with the business community as well. So watch this space, everyone, because we'd love to see more involvement and crossover with Rotary and indeed the Hornsby Chamber of Commerce, which, as my listeners will know, is growing exponentially and becoming very, very involved and donating lots of money back to the community as well. And again, that's what I love about the crossover. Yeah,
and I'm sure the new Hornsby District Rotary Club will be making it part of their priority to develop that relationship. Exactly,
because that's really, I think there's a lot of private organisations who step in when there's a void of networking events, or the Chamber of Commerce is not strong. Then private organisations do step in and take that place, because businesses still need the opportunity to network. But what those private organisations don't do as successfully as a purely community or organisation like Chambers of Commerce is they don't give back as much. They are still, to some extent, privately owned and therefore privately operated and looking at some sort of a profit margin. Yes, they do give back. Yes, there's quite a few of them that operate as a not-for-profit, but I don't really see them as important as a community organisation that works purely and has a history such as a chamber. Because like you mentioned at the beginning of the program, Peter, there's involvement with chambers and Rotarians and not-for-profits for decades in this area.
If you go back a few years, the Hornsby Chamber of Commerce had a level of membership that was not for businesses per se, but for groups like Rotary and PCYC, Hornsby Rotary, Waitara Rotary, Barara. They're all members of the Chamber of Commerce back then. Even our local church, St Paul's, a member of the Chamber of Commerce. PCYC was a member of the Commerce. Studio Arts.
Yes.
And I think that dropped for a while.
Oh, yes. Well, absolutely, it would drop.
That was one way to really connect the Chamber and Rotary and all the other organisations together.
Even simply through events.
And there were some fantastic outcomes coming out of that back some years ago. So there's probably an opportunity there to revisit some of that past.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's one of the remits that we want to try and achieve with.
And pull the community together.
Yeah.
It's pointless. I mean, we're all doing great things. But when the community works together, greater things can happen.
That's exactly right. And that's a good way to end this segment of the program. Look, thank you very much for coming on the program today, guys. It's good to know what community groups are working behind the scenes, and it's good to inform our listeners, particularly businesses, to know how they can be involved and what's happening and how they're supporting their local community. We might not be directly benefiting from Rotarians' hard work, but we are, because we're part of a community that has a strong Rotary presence. So thank you very much for coming on the program. We're just going to take a quick break here on Small Biz Matters, and I'll be back after these community service announcements. You are listening to Triple H 100.1 FM. And welcome back to Small Biz Matters, the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. Very pleased to have and proud to have a couple of very long-standing Rotarians who give so much back to the community. I'd like to thank them very much for their efforts, of course, on behalf of community of Hornsby and Ku-ring-gai. Quick rant today. I just wanted to have a quick chat to you all about something that's happening to a small business and bring your awareness as to what it is that we can do to help. So the Bite Me Bakehouse in Mount Colah is experiencing difficulties, not because they're fabulous, which they are, and have fabulous coffee in my opinion, but because there is no parking restrictions that are going on the Mount Colah Pacific Highway construction zone. So anybody who lives along Asquith and Mount Colah will know that there have been, 50, 60 construction sites all going on up at the same time, and it's having a huge impact on the local community. We understand the necessity, we understand the importance of having medium density housing and how that will help our community grow. However, what I'm disappointed about is the reactive nature of policy that's happening at the local government level, and I'd like to just put it out there to Mayor Steve Russell to say, how are you supporting those local businesses which are going to be directly impacted by these construction zones? Yes, they benefit from having wonderful customers come in from those zones, but they're also losing out on other customers because there is no restricted parking. So when I approached Hornsby Council and approached the RMS on behalf of this business, I was told that it could take up to 3 to 4 months to put in half a dozen parking signs. And that to me just sounds crazy. For starters, we've known about this construction zone coming on board for the last 5 years or so. Why haven't we had plans in place to protect those businesses? We are literally talking about 10 businesses, maybe maximum along the Pacific Highway. But for those individual 10 businesses, this is an important issue and actually affects their bottom line on a day-to-day basis. So my question to the council is, why is it that we're only just having this issue come up now, and why is it coming down to me as a resident to turn around and go, why do I have to protect my local coffee shop? We would love to see a council policy that looks forward and says, we know these construction sites are coming on, we know that they're going to impact small business, how about we put something in place to protect them? And it's disappointing that it's going to take 3 to 4 months before we actually see any progress in this matter, but I will keep my listeners updated. I am on the bandwagon. I'm going to make this happen, and hopefully it won't happen in April, which is what has been suggested to me. So, Mayor Steve Russell, if you are listening, let's get some proactive approach to supporting small businesses who are going to be affected by this construction, just during the hard periods, the difficult periods while the construction is all happening, and we look forward to the blossoming and growing nature that is Asquith and Ku-ring-gai. And while I'm onto it, Matt Keane, if you're listening, I'd like to know what's being done about train timetables with the influx of 12,000 new families along this Pacific Highway route. Is there any new trains being put in place? As I spoke to my neighbour at Mount Colah the other day, he said 30 years ago there were 2 trains stopping at Mount Colah every hour, I should say. Every hour, 2 trains 30 years ago. Yesterday, 2 trains every hour. Let's just leave you with that thought. You're listening to Small Biz Matters. Think about how you can support your local small businesses by talking to local government and state government and protecting those businesses, because that is what makes us live in a thriving community, which is Hornsby Ku-ring-gai. You've been listening to Small Biz Matters. It's the half-hour program where you work on your business rather than in it. I look forward to speaking to you again next week. And this is Alexi Boyd signing off from Boyd Office Management Services, Triple H 100.1 FM.